Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang. So welcome back to part 3 of the video in the analysis of 23 dragons. So when we left off at this position, right, I told you something about how I cannot take here. And that's completely true. I cannot take here unless there's like a check. And that's what our opponent fell into. King E2 allows me to take it with check and go back. So figure out the drawing, the move that draws, right? So let's take a move like King F3. And the reason why this doesn't exactly draw, it might draw, but it might not, is because Black can play Rook B2. And that's, you might think, ooh, that doesn't do much. But after D6, right, you might think, okay, what's going on, right? Might have like a pass pawn here, maybe something. I don't know. But after c4, right, now the tables are turning because, first of all, white has to worry about this pawn and protect both of these pawns. That's impossible, right? So white has to give up one of his pawns. But one of the hardest things to see is the move King F1. It is an only move. And here's why. The reason why is because blacks it's really hard to recognize, but blacks only move or only play in the position is pushing this pawn or moving the rook back and forth. So anytime black moves the pawn up, you get closer to this pawn. After c3, king moves closer to the pawn. After rook b2, just don't do anything. Just move the rook over, maybe threaten it, but don't take it. Don't take it because you want to keep this guy alive. Right, let's say bishop d6. Well, rook c6. Be simple. Threaten the bishop. Keep threatening the pawn. After bishop f8, you can check and pick up the bishop. So the white rook is good there. So the bishop has to go back. You just go back. Right, so just protect this guy. So let's say, for example, a very critical variation, c2. What do you think? And here's the reason why. After king d2, this is very hard to see, but the move bishop h6 is one of those moves that you might not see. Right, so you might think rook c8, let me just queen. Let's bring in king f7. And after b8 queen, f3. This is a killer move. And after king d3, well, let me just take that queen. And after rook takes, you promote, or I promote. And that's bad for white. So white has to still watch out for these things. The only move here is king c1. And after bishop a3, right, so king c1 attacks this rook. The rook is still attacking the pawn. So after bishop a3, well, now it gets all tricky. Check, king f8. If white promotes, rook takes the pawn with check. So this would be losing, because after rook takes, hello, that's check, and that's really bad for white. So white can't promote, we know that. The only move, rook, it could be rook c3, threaten the bishop, or rook a8, threaten the bishop. The reason being is that after rook c3, let's look at it. There's a rook b3, king takes c2, rook takes, king takes, bishop d6, right? Although I'm guarding the promotion square, well, what does white do? Bam, bam, bam. It's not looking great, so it's going to be a draw anyways. It's just we missed our winning chance. So in the game, 23 dragons gave me a way out. Played king e2. Played rook takes, king d3, and went back. And now I got some play. e4. King d2. I played e3. Now the reason I played e4 was because I could play e3, but also because I could get my bishop out. So there are two things, right? If the bishop was here, it could guard this, and it could provide support for my pawns. So king d2, e3, king e2, I checked it. King f3, I decided rook f2. My bad. It's just getting late at night, so rook f2, king e4, e2. So I am going very brave at this moment. I am accepting the fate that white's going to get a queen. I am also accepting that I will get a queen. So each person queens. But I have an extra bishop, and this will play a very crucial role. After king f5, notice, I don't take the pawn or anything. I can. It's a good move. It's a really good move. But what I want to do is look for the checks before white does. So if white gets a queen here, right, that's good game for me. So what I have to do is I have to check white's king first. You can notice that the queen has no checks in this position. The rook has a suicidal check, but other than that, no checks. So what I have to do is create a check. So I play queen e2. I look for a check. I look for a check. I look for a check. So after rook d8, completely fine, piling it up, I look for the check. Bam. King e6, and this walks into a mate in 2. Queen f7, king e5, rook e2. That's checkmate. So there was so much we had in this game, right? There was so much analysis. We looked at this idea of h6 preventing knight g5, right? We also looked at the idea of how b5 gave me this spot. We also looked at how g5 might have been a little bit of a mistake, and b6 was a mistake that I pointed out and explained why. How you can take and cement your knight on e4. So after this, well, I took my time. After knight takes, which was very, sketchy, so I went with it, I flowed with it, a5. So here, I probably should have just played f3 or taken, right? So even here, I should have played f3. Don't know why I didn't. Rook g6, I was a little bit worried about the pawn. And here, maybe I could have even played bishop f8, just keep the pawn under control. So another move was f3. So after knight b3, I allowed this sacrifice, very strong sacrifice. And then we talked about the complicated dynamic of the game, how only one variation for white really leads to a drawn position. But it's really hard, and that's what exactly makes chess somewhat fascinating and at the same time also a very mind-boggling game. So hopefully you did enjoy something from my 3-part analysis on my game against 23 Dragons. And please send in any analysis that you want me to do, right? So if you have a game that you want to send in, send it to just my chess.com account, poo2012, right? Or if you want to send it to my Gmail, you could send it to my Google account. You could make it as a comment and sort of just talk about, okay, I want to send this game. Could you please analyze this and this? That would be great. If you want me to help you learn something, I'd be happy to do that. So just ask me, and I'll see you in the next video.